I'm ready.
Okay, good. So this is Jeff Corrigan, oral historian for the State Historical Society of Missouri. I'm here today, March 22nd, 2012, in Springfield, Missouri, at the Greene County Extension Center at the Botanical Gardens to interview Olive Hampton about her experience attending and teaching at a one-room schoolhouse. Also in the room is Dr. Virginia Lass, one of the Society's trustees and a history professor, a retired history professor from Missouri Southern, and Olive's husband, Vernon. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Vernon. Olive, can you tell me when and where you were born?
I was born September the 1st, 1925, in their home north of Hartville, Missouri, in Wright County.
So Hartville, Missouri, in Wright County.
Right.
Did you have any siblings?
Well, Harold was already, they already had Harold, the one I just told you about. And then I had two other brothers, younger.
So Harold was your older brother.
Yes.
Then were you second in line?
Yes.
Okay. And then what was your other two brothers' names?
Johnny and Carl.
Johnny and Carl. Okay. And what did your parents do for a living?
My dad he managed the Missouri Farmers Exchange store. It was a feed store and a grocery store.
And where was that located at?
Well, it was on Highway 5, about 7 miles north of Hartville.
And did your mom stay at home?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever have to work did you ever work at the store?
No.
Okay. Now, when and where did you start school?
I started to school, Little Creek School.
Can you say it again?
Little Creek School.
Little Creek School.
In 1930. August 1930.
And did you always call it Little Creek?
Yes.
Did your brothers also go there?
Yes.
Okay. Could you describe the school for me?
Yes. I was going to tell you, I was only 4 years old the day I started school.
You were?
Is that going to come out later in the story?
Okay.
Because I had had all the diseases and I wanted to go. So my folks let me go.
Because typically they didn't have kindergarten or anything.
Right,
You had to wait till first
exactly.
grade. So you were allowed to go before then?
Yes.
Okay. But yeah, if you want to tell me, describe the inside of the school, the outside of the school, as much as you remember about the actual physical building. Okay.
It was the rural one-room school with all 8 elementary grades. And there was usually around 40 students ranging from ages 5, I was 4, and I turned 5 September 1st, to 18 years of age that's in school each year. You want just the description of the school?
Yeah, was it red? Was it white? Was it,
Okay. It was a white building, and both inside the sidewalls were all were windows, and then in between each window was blackboards. Of course, we used the boards to work on, and then the porch in front, and the school bell and the belfry, and the back of the room was bookcases, and we had our heating stove. It was a those that had the box king heat. No, not king. What do you call those? Box stove with the jacket around them. I've forgotten what they were called, but that's what we heated with.
Was it wood or coal?
Wood. It was a wood stove.
Wood stove.
And we did not have electricity. We had no electricity, no running water. The well was out in front of the building, and the teacher and probably some of the older kids probably helped draw water out of the well and put in a water bucket. We all drank out of the same dipper for a while.
I was curious about that. If you.
And my great aunt, who became the county superintendent, and
what was her name?
Essie Finley. She got us cleaned up. First thing, she had them put in a pump well, so they pumped it out, and then in a bucket. Then we all had to bring our own dippers at that point. And then I told you about the diseases that Harold had when he started. So about 2 or 3 years later, after I started, the county nurse came out and vaccinated all of us for those childhood diseases.
Do you want to mention again while we're on the recorder what was some of the diseases your brother had and then given to you?
He had whooping cough, measles, and chickenpox. That was the 3 diseases at that time. And of course, the reason for the vaccinations was typhoid. You know, the bad water could have been typhoid. In fact, we had a little girl in the school who did die. She didn't have typhoid. I think it was scarlet fever, maybe is what it was called. They could not put her body in the church to have the service. It had to be out because people were afraid of it because it was so contagious. So, then going ahead with this classroom, I remember the big pictures of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln hanging on the walls, on the side of the walls. And the front of the room was a blackboard where the teacher put her assignments. Every morning we had our assignments on the board. And the flag, we said the pledge to the flag every morning. And we sang song. We always had a song every morning, said the pledge. And
so what kind of songs would you sing?
So, well, I know one teacher she was a gospel, so we had gospel songs. See, back then we didn't have movies to go to. This was the community building. So it was our entertainment. so.
Now you said you had the chalkboards in between the windows on the walls.
Yeah.
So you didn't have the individual slates at your desk then, correct?
I don't remember having a slate on my desk.
Okay.
We may have had, but that I don't remember.
Okay. Do you remember approximately how big the building was?
Well, at the time it was huge, but I was little. I'm sure if I could see it now, it wouldn't be so big. But see, the thing about in time, they consolidated all the rural schools into town, and so somebody in the community was not happy with that. So they set fire and burned our building down. So all of that burned up. Not only our school, but they also burned another building down but they always suspicioned who did it, but they didn't have any proof, so they could never find out who did that.
Do you remember when that was burned down, roughly?
Well, it was not too long after they consolidated in about 52, and that's about the time when it would have burned down. 52 to 53 in that vicinity. I don't know the exact year.
No, that's okay. One of the things you kind of mentioned, and I was going to ask that, was you kind of mentioned the school was also like a community center.
Yes.
Could you describe what other activities were held there?
We always had pie suppers for money raisers, and we had and that was a big community thing.
And could you describe how they were run?
Yes, I can. They had all the ladies in this area brought in pies, home-baked pies, and they all were displayed on the front. And then the men and boys bid on the pies. They were not supposed to know whose pies they were, but once in a while, I'm sure that happened a lot. They'd know if somebody's had it, and everybody wanted that pie, so that one made a good prize. That one, whoever bid the highest got the pie. And then the boys or men had to eat with the girl or lady whose pie they had. So,
but you're saying that ahead of time, most people didn't know, you weren't supposed to know whose pie it was.
Right, exactly.
Okay, that's the first time I had heard that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what time of year was this held? Was it always the same time each year? Was it in the fall? Or?
Fall, that would be, because I remember they had cherry pies and, I mean, there were good pie bakers in the community. And,
Now, was the school used for anything else? Did you have like a Christmas program there?
yes, we always had a Christmas program. And there again, it was for the community. Everybody who wanted to come and see the program came. And then we always had a program the last day of school. And that was a big picnic day. All the parents came in and brought basket lunches. And we had a big picnic.
Now, would you do, was it kind of set up almost like today we think of maybe like a little spring fling, or like did you have games and activities to play at the picnic? And
well, we had games. We played I've got them in my story. We had games all year. Oh, you mean like contest games?
Yeah, at the picnic. Yeah, I'll ask you about recess later, but I wondered about the, was this a day-long event on the weekend?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was on the last day of school, but
okay.
Friday. And
did the school get used for anything else? I mean, was that the kind of place where if there was a local meeting or anything, was it held there?
Now, see, I can't say yes or no to that because I have a feeling it was. Okay. But of course, we had a church, a Little Creek church also, and it would have been used for a lot of that. It was a big, nice. It was a nice place for somebody to be raised in. I'll tell you that much.
Okay.
You're talking about games. We had ante over, where two teams on each side of the schoolhouse, and throw the ball over the schoolhouse, and the point. And if you caught the ball, if somebody caught the ball, then you got the team get to run around to the other side, and they tag anybody they could, and then they had to stay on that team. So
that was one of your recess activities.
Right, exactly.
Do you remember, did you have recess, was it both morning, noon, and afternoon?
Yes, we had, because then we had the bathrooms, we had the outdoor toilets, so that's when we went to the toilets.
Did they have an outhouse for both the boys and the girls?
Yes, we had a separate outhouse. Yeah.
And were those back behind the school?
Yes.
Was there, outside of the school, was there any type of playground equipment or?
Well, we had a ball diamond, and we had swings. And that's about the only equipment I remember. I don't think we had slides, but we had swings.
So you did have a ball diamond and swings?
Yes, we had a ball diamond.
Do you remember roughly how long recess was?
I would say probably, now this is guess, I'm guessing 20 minutes probably, but then we had a good hour at noon to play.
So what other games besides ante over did you play?
Well, we had, let me read off my list here. I've got it written down. We played dodgeball, we played marble games, we ran races, we played horseshoes, we played jump the rope and hopscotch, and then he reminded me this morning, pick up sticks.
Okay.
Bunch of
And now when it was time for the games to end, I think this is pretty interesting. The teacher would ring the bell. That's when the school bell would ring, and we know it's time to come in and get to work.
Now, what did you do when there was bad weather outside?
I remember one game we played where the ball was thrown over our heads, and we could play games on the board. We had math games. We used to have ciphering matches at our school and spelling bees. That was part of our entertainment. We'd invite other schools to come to our school, and we'd have a spelling bee in competition with the other class, and ciphering matches, which is math, of course.
Okay.
And,
but you said there was a game, though, that you played inside that you would throw a ball over somebody's head. Could you tell me about?
I guess that was keep away.
Okay. Now, was the teacher always supervising you outside, or were you guys just on your own?
No, she wouldn't. The teachers couldn't have been everywhere on the playground. I'm sure the teacher was more at the front of the building, where you could see it all, because with that many people, there's gonna be a lot of activity going on everywhere.
And you said that many people. Remind me again, how many students were in the school and how many were in your class?
I think in the first grade, you can see that, those pictures, there's a bunch of little ones down there. But we had pretty good sized classes, and they, probably 6 to 8, except when you got up to those older classes, some of those kids who were taking the 8th grade more than their first or second year in the 8th grade, the 8th grade probably was a bigger class. But, because you could see those kids were good sized kids in that picture.
Did the population fluctuate a lot in the school, or did it stay pretty consistent?
It was pretty consistent. I have to tell you how we got to school. Oh, our lunches. That's another thing. Our lunches. We carried our lunch sack, and usually it was a biscuit with a fried egg, because we didn't go to the store and buy a loaf of bread because there wasn't any there to be had. And I guess we probably had fruit because we always had orchards, and probably cookies. We had to walk a long ways to get to the school. I walked about 2 miles.
I was gonna say, how far? Yeah, so you said it was about 2 miles from your farm.
Right.
Did you walk with your older brother then?
Yes.
Did your mother ever walk you to school? Or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And there was another family that would join us on the way home sometime. But in the snow then, when the snow was on, they wrapped back then we didn't wear jeans, we didn't wear long pants to school. And we'd wear underwear, long underwear. And then when it snowed, they'd wrap gunny sack material around our legs, and tie it with string to keep our legs from getting in the snow too much. And the girls, see, when we had the long underwear on and you pull your hose up over that, the girls would be embarrassed, and so we'd get to school and we'd roll our underwear up. We had that big wad around her, and it probably looked worse than the one of it lifted down. But we hid the underwear at least, the long underwear.
Well, we can hit a few different things. One thing I wanted to ask you about was, do you remember your teachers? Did you have one teacher throughout, or did it change a lot?
Virgil Rippey, my first grade teacher was Marie Mingus. And
Marie Mingus.
And then my second and third grade teacher was Virgil Rippey. And my fourth grade teacher was Ethel Latimer. My fifth and sixth grade teacher was Alice Kilmer. And my seventh and eighth grade teacher was Janie Hake.
What was Virgil's last name again?
Rippey.
Rippey, okay. Now, out of all of those teachers, and you had quite a few, is there anything that sticks out in your mind? Did you think one of those was just the best teacher that you thought you learned the most, or that you enjoyed the most?
Well, I think I have warm feelings about Virgil Rippey, the second and third grade teacher, and then Alice Kilmer, our fifth and sixth grade teacher, was she's the one that would let us sing gospel songs, and that's where I learned to sing harmony, alto, because she taught. That's what she taught us. And,
so was she the only one that had? So did she incorporate music into the classroom then?
we all just something. We always sang something a little more. We did that all the time, and that was it. Just that one.
Was that just with her? With all the teachers you said?
We all said the pledge and sang something. Probably America. I bet we did some patriotic song probably.
And did you put the flag up every day outside too?
Yes.
Was that always, did that rotate who did that? Did different students do that each day? Okay. One question I have is, did you learn a lot from listening to the other kids?
I'm sure I did. That was something I was going to tell you. At the end of my first grade year, I was just 5 years old. As you know, I started at 4. And the teacher asked my parents if they wanted me to be promoted. she told them that I knew as much as the rest of them did, but I wasn't old enough. But they chose to let me go on. So I graduated from high school at 16. And that's why when I started teaching, I was 17 years old.
Okay.
So,
were you lined up in the classroom? Was it one where the young kids were up front and then
yes,
the older kids were back? Did you have the individual seats, or did you have kind of those bench seats?
No, we had the benches that had two, and then those desks.
The table, the top kind of
Right.
folded up? Okay. Let's see, you told us how you got to school each day and how far it was. Could you tell me specifically a little bit more where the school was located? Since it no longer exists, do you know what road it was on, or?
Well, it wasn't too far off of Highway 5. We walked from where we lived through the woods. We had to go by the Little Creek Church and through the woods, and we were within, you could see the store. You could see my dad's store. That's where my dad's store was. It was right on a little bit farther down was Highway 5, and that's where the MFA exchange was.
Okay.
So we were close to Highway 5.
Okay. Now, going back to the school on the inside, did you have chores to perform as a kid? Did you have to carry in water, wood, clean?
The teachers, were their own janitors. So somebody had to carry in the wood and clean out the ashes and carry in the water. So I don't remember. I'm sure I did my part, but I don't remember it because there was for a while there'd been a lot of older kids to do it, and I'm sure we had to wash the blackboards because they were used. They had been cleaned, and I remember dusting erasers. I remember doing that.
Where you went outside
and hit them on the wall and dusted the chalk dust out of them.
Was that something that was done every day, or did you do it every week?
Probably every week.
Every week.
And see, the stove we had, I can't say, is that a pot-bellied stove? Is that what they're called?
That sounds familiar.
And the ashtrays were in under it. And when it was really cold, and we'd come in from outside, and everybody have cold feet, the teacher would let us sit around the stove once in a while, and I could remember some of the boys be a little roughshod, and I can remember them spilling some of those coals out of the pan, and somebody had to clean it up.
Now you said you talked about your lunch. You said lunch was an hour though?
Yes.
Did everybody always stay at the school, or did some kids live close enough?
They all stayed at the school.
They all stayed at the school. Now, what about in winter? I've heard sometimes a teacher maybe would put on a pot of soup or something. Did that ever happen?
No, we never had anything like that at that time.
I was wondering one other thing about the inside of the school. Did you have a piano or anything?
Yeah, well, they had. I think it was an organ.
Okay.
Well, there was an organ.
Was it only one room, or was there a cloakroom or anything?
It was one room, and both corners. As you came in the front, there's two front doors. And the boys' coats are here, and the girls over here, and our lunch boxes. There's shelves for lunch boxes.
Did you have any area in the school that had like library books or anything?
Yes, back in the back, one all across the back were no windows in the back, and one side was where the stove was, and then the bookcases on all across there.
Did you have a lot of books, or?
I remember it seemed like it was a lot, but again, I was not very old, so it could have, but I'm sure we had plenty.
Were you ever allowed to check them out and take them home?
I'm sure we did. I don't remember that for sure, but I imagine we got to take a reading. I'm sure we had to have some study at times.
Okay. And did you go to that school all the way through the 8th grade?
I did.
You did? And you graduated from there?
Yes.
Where did you go after that? Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Hartville, Missouri. My plans were, at that time, up until 1938, there had not been school buses to take kids to town, to school, to high school. So a lot of those kids in my room were big older kids because that was their second or third year in the 8th grade. So my plans were, when I graduated in the spring, was to take another year in the 8th grade. But during the summer, they got school buses. So we got to go to school. And
So then you were bused to Hartsville.
Right.
Hartville or Hartsville?
Hart, Hartville. And we rode this bus. They'd pick us up, and we rode several miles, to pick up everybody that was riding the bus. We rode, so.
Okay. By any chance, did you keep in contact with anybody that you ever went to school with?
Well, we all went to high school. Yeah, we all were. Most everybody everybody in my class went to high school together, and then after that, we all had different occupations. I was going to school, and
Now, could you tell me, do you feel that you got a quality education?
I think we had a good school. I think that's why the people resented it. Because now the only thing that would have been lacking, we wouldn't have had as good a music program, we wouldn't have bands, and we probably wouldn't have had basketball, that stuff. But we had it was the best school in Wright County. I can say that. It was good. It was a good school, and I had a good education there.
Why do you think that was? Do you think, were your parents and the community parents, was education valued?
Yes, I think that's what Big Little Creek, I think everybody was. And I'll go ahead with the story of the good school. A lot of us from our school turned out to be valedictorian and salutatorians in school. I was a salutatorian, and Johnny was valedictorian, and Carl was salutatorian. And then I could name a lot of other kids who went on in other grade levels who were, so that tells you we had a good education compared to some of the other schools around. It was a good one.
Okay, good. So your parents and other parents, the school board, they valued it, having a good teacher and a good education.
Exactly. And see, a lot of times during the year too, we didn't have we would just have 6.5 months of school because they didn't have enough money to pay the teacher. So a lot of times 6.5 months school was out, and it always started early. We always started the 1st of August because the older kids need to get out in the spring to help put out crops. So that's the way they did. And
Now, I'm going to ask you this question later. Because you weren't just a student, you also were a teacher.
yes.
Could you tell me how that happened? How, you said you graduated at school at 16,
Yeah.
turned 17, but can you tell me how that happened? How you ended up becoming the teacher then?
Well, all of my ancestors were teachers or doctors. So it was in my blood, to be a teacher. In fact, my dad taught a year or two before he did, and my aunt was Harold's 1st grade teacher, that picture there, and another aunt taught all of her life, and it was just kind of ingrained in me. So actually, the first year I taught, just thrown at me, I just had the opportunity and I took it.
And when was that? Was that when you turned 17?
I was 17. I had 1 year when I was 16, but it was I don't remember much about that school. It was a learning experience for me. I was way too young to be thrown into that situation. I'm sure those kids didn't learn much. But then the next year, I went to the other school, and I had a good experience. I didn't say that for the teacher in the school I went to, and I didn't too. We had a course of study that we had to follow. See, 8 grades, that could have been a problem, had to teach everybody all they needed. So we had a course of study. For each grade, it told us what those kids needed to be taught. And if you didn't teach it, those kids that were graduating in the 8th grade would have been in trouble because they had to pass a test to get their diploma. So we had to teach it. And so
what was the name of the school that you taught at?
Loring, and it was it was down closer to Grove Springs, Missouri. and it was wartime. The reason I could teach at 16 and 17 because we had just gone to war, World War II, so they were short of teachers. So they could use anybody who wanted to do it could teach. And during the year there, the Army wanted scrap metal, so the parents would bring in loads of old worn out cars and automobile and anything that was metal and pile in the front yard, and then the Army would come by and pick up that scrap metal and take it to make I guess guns or whatever they used it for.
Do you remember how much you were paid?
I don't,
Okay.
but it was money.
And how long did you teach for then?
I taught 2 years there, and I walked to that too. I walked about 3 miles every morning to get to that school and walked home.
And was this from your parents' house still?
Yes.
So it was 3 miles in the other direction?
Right.
Okay. So not too far from where you went to school, just...
Right.
Okay.
Just another direction.
Okay. Now, do you have any stories that stick out in your mind about maybe something that happened at the school, something funny, something you really just sticks in your mind that you'd like to share?
I can't think of anything like that right now.
Okay. Now I'll ask you, since you taught at a school and you went to a school, what kind of influence do you think attending a one-room school and teaching at a one-room school had on your life?
I think that by going to one myself before I started teaching, I think I had learned that it was important, to every grade level get what they needed. So I think that would have been the main thing. It was just, when I started teaching, I wanted to make sure that every kid at every grade level got what they needed. And I did my best to get it across.
Now that experience with you taking over the classroom, did that give you confidence? Did it make you independent? Or, how do you view that first job of yours? Do you...
Well, I enjoyed it. and I feel like at the time, I know that first year I told you about, I didn't do too well. But when I started this 2 years at Loring School, I felt like I knew what I was doing, and I think I did. And when I see that, and the other, I didn't tell you this, when in order to get the next year contract, you had to go to STC. It was State Teachers College then. I had to go in the summer to STC. Well, see that back then STC had 4 terms. They had fall, winter, spring, and summer, 9-week terms. And so by starting school in August, I would get out in time to get 2 terms in at STC. And because, so...
So you would teach starting August 1st through winter, or
Yeah.
up to winter.
Something like the 1st of March is when school would be out. And,
Okay, so then you took the spring semester and the summer semester?
Right, at STC. And I had to walk about 4 miles to get to Highway 38 to catch the bus to ride to Springfield. I didn't have an automobile, and my folks didn't have an automobile.
Okay, so you went to what is today here in Springfield,
Yes.
Missouri,
Yes,
Missouri State
Right,
University, but back then it was called STC.
right.
Okay, and what kind of were you taking classes, education classes, to help you become a better teacher? What kind of classes were you taking?
Well, the classes I took were not for elementary. My major was commerce subjects, typing, shorthand, and bookkeeping, and that's the classes I took. But I got my hours in, and so I took those classes because after I got through with the elementary school 2 years, then I started teaching commerce subjects. I went to Purdy, Missouri, and taught 4 years at Purdy, Missouri.
Purdy, Missouri?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and you taught typing?
I taught typing, shorthand, and bookkeeping.
Okay.
But I was getting my hours in for my contract at the rural school where I was teaching.
And did you continue on with that later? Did you continue teaching, or?
Yes, I did. I married him. then I.
And what year was that? What year did you guys get married?
1948.
1948. Okay.
And so then I left. Then I left Purdy, Missouri, and came home. We lived close to where my folks lived, in that area down at Hartville, and so times were hard, and I had to work, so I just continued going. By that time, I almost had my degree in commerce. Not quite, and I had a minor in math. But at that time, those openings in commerce field were not there. You had to go way out another town. So then I got chances to teach in elementary school, and I started that. And then I had to take a few more classes at SMS in order to get a degree in elementary education. And then we moved to Springfield, and then I taught here in Springfield for 30 years.
Oh, you did? Where'd you teach at?
At Mark Twain School.
So you taught at Mark Twain School in Springfield here for 30 years?
Yes.
And what did you teach?
6th grade, basically. I had other grades to start with, but this principal, she said, you belong with the 6th grade. She said, she said, I wouldn't put you down, Morgan. You now need you in the 6th grade. So, of course, I had taught the high school kids, and I guess maybe without my realizing it, I guess you deal with them a little different, the older kids.
So you ended up, so teaching became early on at 16, but it became the rest of your life, you taught?
Yes.
Okay. So that school, that one-room schoolhouse did have a lasting effect on you.
Yes. And not only that, but my son and his wife are teachers here in Springfield. Ron Hampton was the head of the Phelps Gifted Education Program in the last few years. But he was at other schools to start with. And then his wife, Janice, is taught here in Springfield. And then my daughter lives in Texas now, taught in Springfield. and
what's her name?
Linda.
So you have Ron and Linda?
And then Ron's wife is Janice, Ron and Janice, and Linda. And then Helen got her education degree, but then she's in insurance. She's working with insurance now. And
so you had 3 children, or?
I had 4. Larry,
4.
but he didn't go into education. He's a music man. so.
Okay, so you guys had 4 children and quite a few with education degrees in education. Okay.
And then I have, this is going to be, is it okay to put something else in my story?
Yeah, yes.
All 5 of our grandchildren now, we have seen them all graduate from high school, and all of them graduate from college. And now we've got one that's in the Air Force who's been overseas 4 times. And so we feel very fortunate to have
2 doctors. 2 doctors are grand.
Your grandchildren, too. So you have 5 grandchildren.
5 grandchildren.
And 2 of them are doctors?
Well, one's trying to be a doctor, another is an anesthesiologist, which is a doctor.
Yes.
And then another one is in nurses training. And then the other granddaughter is, got her degree in criminology last year, and so she's in her master's program there now. And then the other son is an architect. He graduated from Drury, an architect. He's working down at the architect company. So
when you said a while ago that education ran in your family, and you meant beforehand, you also mean afterwards.
Exactly.
So you have a long running tradition of education.
Yes.
That's great. Is there anything else I saw you had some notes there. Is there anything else we didn't talk about, or any stories or activities that happened at the school? If you want to look over your notes quick, because we have time to put it on here on the tape if you want. But I want to make.
You got to turn it off, and you probably.
It's still on right now, but yeah, I just want to make sure there's something we didn't cover. If you want to, take your time.
I'll see if there's. I told you about carrying lunch to school.
Yes.
And about the teacher not wanting to know if she could be promoted. I told you about the water supply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, take your time to see. I want to make sure that we get everything that you want to cover on here and everything that you wrote down.
we had board games to use inside.
Okay.
We had checkers, dominoes, tic-tac-toe, and then I told you about the keep away ball.
Yeah.
And I told you about George Washington, Abraham Lincoln's picture.
Uh-huh.
We didn't have electricity. Oh, that's something. We used coal oil and kerosene lamps.
Okay.
And filled the lamp bowls with kerosene, and the wick was in it, and it ended up above the oil so it could be lit. And we had globes for the lamps. We had kerosene lanterns. Of course, the school had windows, lots of windows on both sides of the building, so we had lots of daylight.
Was it one of those where the windows always on the east and west side?
No,
you
they
remember?
were on. Yes, they were.
Okay.
They were. So,
I don't know why I know that, but I found out in a lot of these interviews that it seemed that the schools were always set up that they always faced north and south, and the windows faced east and west to let the sunlight in because they had no electricity.
now,
She had mentioned that. That's the first time though that anybody's mentioned chalkboards any place other than the front.
oh, really?
Yeah, that's why I had asked you again about in between each window. You said there was a chalkboard.
Yeah.
Were they big windows? Like big?
Yeah, they had to be pretty good sized windows, I bet you.
Huge.
The whole side of the wall was windows and blackboards,
Okay.
And the windows weren't as big as the chalkboards, I don't imagine, and see, the thing about my kids want me to write a book, and I may write a book with using some of this information. I'm kind of being pushed now. But when you get into it, it's hard to stop, you know.
No. It's great that you wrote down this stuff too. That way you had a reference to it, and you can reference it for something else.
Yeah.
And it's nice that you have the pictures too,
Yeah.
so you can look back at your class and
Well,
see how many kids there
I
are.
saw a picture in the Sunday paper of somebody's classroom. Somebody put in the paper Sunday.
And that
Sunday.
article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I brought my pictures. You know.
Well, great. Well, if you don't want to add anything else, I'm going to go ahead and shut off the
All right.
recorder. So, but thank you very much for sharing your story.
Well,
I really
I
appreciate
enjoyed
it. No, I hope you enjoyed it too. Thank you.